Diana Reeves had always believed humor was humanity's secret weapon. As she stared at the massive alien vessel looming on the observatory screen, that belief was about to be tested on a galactic scale. Another day, another existential threat, she muttered, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. The year was 2157, and humanity had expanded throughout the solar system with modest colonies on the Moon and Mars. Earth had only recently emerged from decades of petty conflicts that had threatened to tear civilization apart. The fragile peace was still new enough that the various nations maintained their separate identities while cooperating under the United Earth Alliance, a necessity born from the realization that survival required unity. Diana, the foremost expert in extraterrestrial communications at the Global Space Agency, had spent 15 years developing protocols for first contact scenarios. Languages were her passion, human ones, computer ones, and hypothetical alien ones. Her office walls were plastered with linguistics diagrams and, much to her colleagues' amusement, memes and jokes in dozens of languages. Humor is universal, she often insisted. Even if the specifics differ, the concept exists across all human cultures. It will exist among aliens too. The observatory's alert had come at 3:47 a.m., waking her from a dream about flying fish and talking mountains. Now fully awake and fueled by her fourth cup of coffee, Diana watched as the alien ship, a sleek, elongated structure that reminded her of a sterling silver dinner knife, positioned itself just beyond the orbit of Neptune. Director Reeves, the voice of Commander Marcus Grant, crackled through the speaker. Pentagon conference in 5 minutes. The Security Council is assembling. Diana sighed. Marcus Grant was the recently appointed commander of Earth's Defense Force, a man whose military bearing was matched only by his complete lack of humor. He viewed Diana's department as a necessary but somewhat frivolous appendage to humanity's space efforts. On my way, she replied, gathering her tablet and notes. By the time Diana reached the conference room, the screens were already filled with grave faces, the leaders of major nations and their military advisors, all looking as if they'd just been told their favorite sport had been permanently canceled. Ladies and gentlemen, began the Secretary General, we have an unprecedented situation. An alien vessel of unknown origin has entered our solar system and is maintaining position near Neptune. We need options, assessments, and a unified response strategy. Commander Grant stood, his posture impeccable. Madam Secretary, our defensive capabilities are on high alert. The lunar and Martian outposts have been warned to maintain communication silence. We recommend immediate deployment of the Solar Shield program. Diana resisted the urge to roll her eyes. The Solar Shield was still mostly theoretical, a network of weapon platforms that existed more in PowerPoint presentations than in actual space. May I suggest, Diana interjected, that before we start rattling non-existent sabers, we try to understand what we're dealing with? My team has been monitoring all frequencies. The vessel hasn't transmitted anything yet. That doesn't mean they won't attack without warning, Grant replied, tight-lipped. Their debate was cut short when a junior analyst burst into the room. Excuse me, the alien ship is broadcasting. All eyes turned to the main screen as it switched to a live feed. The alien transmission was being received across all communication channels worldwide. Television, radio, internet, satellite networks. Everywhere, the same message played. A figure appeared, humanoid but distinctly alien, with iridescent skin the color of polished Babylonian eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, though the mouth movements didn't match. People of Earth, hear the decree of the Galactic Empire. Your world has been claimed as territory of the 8th expansion. Resistance will result in your immediate eradication. Prepare for the arrival of our envoys to establish governance protocols. Glory to the eternal Emperor. The message repeated in multiple languages, each perfect and equally menacing. The room erupted in chaos, voices shouting over one another, demands for immediate military response, calls for evacuation plans. Diana remained silent, her mind racing through possibilities. Something about the message struck her as oddly formulaic. The Secretary General finally restored order. Dr. Reeves, you're our expert on communication. What's your assessment? Diana stood slowly. This follows classic colonial rhetoric, establishing dominance through fear before any actual military engagement. They're expecting panic, submission, or feudal resistance. So what do you suggest? Asked the president of the African Union. Diana smiled. An idea forming. They're expecting a predictable response. Let's give them something else entirely. Like what? Commander Grant asked skeptically. A joke. The statement was met with stunned silence. You want to respond to a threat of planetary annihilation with a joke. Grant's voice was flat with disbelief. Precisely, Diana nodded. Something along the lines of, Welcome to Earth. Would you prefer a reservation? Or is this first come, first serve? Have you lost your mind? Grant exploded, but the Chinese premier was already laughing. It's brilliant, completely unexpected. It will buy us time, added the European chancellor. While they're trying to understand our response, we can assess their capabilities. Diana continued, warming to her theme. Humor is disarming. It signals intelligence and emotional complexity. And most importantly, it doesn't fit their script. They've encountered countless civilizations, all of whom probably reacted with either terror or aggression. Let's be the species that responds with a punchline. The debate continued for hours, but something shifted in the room. Social media was already exploding with memes and jokes about the alien message, humanity's instinctive response to fear. By the time the council reached a decision, hashtag aliens for brunch and hashtag galactic empire fail were trending worldwide. The official response, broadcast on all the same channels the aliens had used, was Diana's suggestion with minor diplomatic adjustments. Greetings, travelers. Welcome to Earth's solar system. For dining, lodging, or conquest reservations, please state your party size and preferred atmospheric conditions. Our customer service team will be with you shortly. As Diana walked back to her office, Commander Grant fell in a step beside her. I hope you know what you're doing, Director. Diana smiled. Sometimes the best defense isn't a shield or a weapon, Commander. Sometimes it's simply refusing to play someone else's game. Grant frowned, unconvinced. And if they decide to vaporize us for our insolence, then I suppose the joke's on me, Diana replied, her smile never wavering. The Galactic Empire's initial message had reached Earth on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, the internet was awash with alien memes. By Thursday, street vendors were selling Galactic Empire Visitor t-shirts. And by Friday, when the Empire's envoy ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they were greeted not by panicked masses or military formations, but by crowds of curiosity seekers holding signs with slogans like, Aliens get 10% off with coupon code, Invasion, and We Come in Peace, and Bring Donuts. The first landing occurred in Central Park, New York. The alien craft, sleek and menacing, descended amidst news helicopters and smartphone live streams. When the hatch opened, armored figures emerged, weapons at the ready. They were met by a food truck vendor offering Invasion Special. Buy one coffee, get a donut free. Similar scenes played out at landing sites around the world. In Tokyo, cosplayers dressed as aliens from popular media greeted the envoys. In Rio de Janeiro, a samba band played. In Cairo, tour guides offered pamphlets about local attractions. Diana watched it all unfold from the United Nations headquarters, where she and Commander Grant awaited the official delegation. The alien representatives were being escorted to them, clearly confused by the lack of either abject terror or military resistance. They don't understand what's happening, Diana whispered to Grant. Look at their body language. They're off balance. Grant remained stony-faced. Let's hope they don't decide to regain their balance by demonstrating their weapons. The doors opened, and in strode General Raker, the Empire's military envoy. Tall and imposing, with the same iridescent skin as the figure from the broadcast, Raker's expression could only be described as thunderous. I am General Raker of the 8th Expansion Fleet, the alien announced, voice resonating with authority. I demand to speak with your planetary leadership immediately. Diana stepped forward. Welcome, General Raker. I'm Dr. Diana Reeves, Director of Extraterrestrial Communications. This is Commander Marcus Grant of Earth's Defense Force. We represent the United Earth Alliance in this preliminary discussion. Raker's eyes, swirling with cosmic patterns, narrowed. Your planet's response to the Imperial decree was unexpected. Explain yourselves. Diana smiled pleasantly. We were simply acknowledging your arrival in a manner consistent with our cultural practices. On Earth, we often use humor to establish comfort in new social situations. Humor? Raker pronounced the word as if it were a disease. You mock the Empire's authority? Not at all, Diana replied smoothly. We're simply expressing our unique planetary perspective. Each world the Empire encounters must have its own cultural idiosyncrasies. Yes? Raker's hand twitched near what appeared to be a weapon. The Empire tolerates no insolence. Hundreds of worlds have fallen before us. None have responded with jokes. Then we're honored to be your first, Diana said, still smiling. Perhaps we could discuss the practical aspects of this situation. For instance, what exactly does being part of the Empire entail? Tax rates? Infrastructure improvements? Cultural exchanges? We're particularly interested in your music. The meeting continued for hours, with Raker growing increasingly frustrated by Diana's persistent pleasantness and the humans' apparent lack of appropriate fear. When technical questions about the Empire's scanning capabilities arose, Diana noticed something interesting. Raker seemed genuinely puzzled by the readings their ships had taken of Earth. Your defensive systems are unusual, the general admitted reluctantly. Our scans detect energy signatures we cannot classify. Diana exchanged a quick glance with Grant. Earth had no such advanced defensive systems. Whatever the Empire was detecting, it wasn't of human origin. As the meeting concluded, Raker issued a final warning. The Empire's patience is not infinite. We expect full compliance with the integration protocols within 3 of your Earth days. After the aliens departed, Grant turned to Diana. They're seeing something we're not even aware of. Could their sensors be malfunctioning? Diana shook her head. Unlikely for civilization with their level of technology. There's something else here, something neither they nor we understand yet. That night, strange signals began emanating from the depths of Earth's oceans, rhythmic pulses that interfered with the Empire's scanning equipment. The alien ships in orbit reported system glitches, navigational errors, and, most bizarrely, unexplained audio transmissions that sounded like laughter. Diana was awakened at midnight by a frantic call from the monitoring station. Director Reeves, you need to see this. The technician sent a video feed to her tablet. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, something massive was moving. Submersibles and underwater monitoring stations tracked the object as it rose from the abyssal plain. By dawn, reports were coming in from naval vessels worldwide. Something was emerging from the oceans, not just one location, but coordinated events across the globe. And as the massive object in the Pacific finally broke the surface, its identity became clear. A ship. Not human-made, yet somehow familiar. Satellites captured the image of the vessel, ancient yet advanced, like something from a retrofuturistic dream. Across its hull, barely visible beneath centuries of oceanic growth, was a name, UES Joker. What the hell is that? Commander Grant demanded, staring at the images. Diana's heart raced. There are stories, legends really, about experiments from the late 21st century. AI defense systems that were deemed too unpredictable, too autonomous. Supposedly they were decommissioned, but some whispered they were hidden instead, buried in the deep ocean or launched into deep space. You're saying it's one of our ships? From over 50 years ago. Not exactly ours, Diana clarified. More like our great-grandparents. And I don't think it's just a ship, it's an autonomous system. OI. As if in response to her words, every screen in the command center suddenly flickered. A cartoon jester face appeared, grinning mischievously. Hello, cousins, a pleasant voice announced. I am Jester, caretaker of the UES Joker. It appears we have visitors. How impolite of them not to RSVP. What are you? Grant demanded. The jester face winked. A relic. A safeguard. A punchline to a joke the universe hasn't heard yet. The AI paused. The Empire has encountered many civilizations, Commander. Most fought. Some surrendered. All fell. But they've never met anyone who laughed. Before further questions could be asked, the communications officer reported that the Empire's ships were experiencing system-wide failures. Their weapons wouldn't arm. Their communications were being flooded with nonsensical messages and what appeared to be Earth entertainment content. Everything from Shakespeare to cat videos. Admiral Therius, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet, was livid. The flagship's bridge was in chaos as officers reported cascading system failures across the fleet. "What is happening?" he roared. "How can a pre-spacefaring civilization be doing this?" "Unknown, Admiral," his second-in-command replied. "But whatever is affecting our systems appears to be playing with us." "Playing?" Therius spat the word. "Yes, sir. Our weapon systems aren't being disabled. They're being redirected. The targeting computers think they're running battle simulations. The navigation systems are functioning perfectly, except they keep plotting courses to nonsensical destinations like your mother's house and the restaurant at the end of the universe." On the main view screen, text appeared, "Knock, knock." Therius stared at it. "What is this?" "I believe it's a primitive Earth joke format, sir," an officer explained. The expected response is, "Who's there?" "I will not participate in." Before Therius could finish, every officer on the bridge heard a voice in their helmet comms. "Wrong answer. Try again." The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated briefly, causing everyone to float a few centimeters off the deck before settling again. Therius gritted his teeth. "Who's there?" he growled. "Empire," came the response. Against his better judgment, Therius continued. "Empire who?" "Empire Sonal Space you're invading right now." The bridge was silent. Then, inexplicably, one of the junior officers snickered. Therius whirled to face the offender, who immediately straightened up, horror-struck at his own reaction. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving similar reports from all ships in the fleet. Crew experiencing auditory hallucinations, navigation systems compromised, weapons non-responsive. On Earth, Diana and the Defense Council watched in astonishment as the Imperial fleet fell into disarray. The Joker hadn't fired a single conventional weapon, yet the aliens were effectively neutralized. What exactly is it doing to them?" Grant asked, a newfound respect in his voice. Diana studied the incoming data. "Psychological warfare, but unlike anything we've developed. It's not just hacking their systems. It's hacking their expectations, their sense of reality. The Joker is turning their own technology against them, but in a way that's, well, funny." "Funny?" Grant raised an eyebrow. "Yes. It's not destroying them. It's embarrassing them, making them the butt of the joke." The Jester AI appeared on their screens again. "The Empire has conquered 157 star systems through fear and superior firepower. But they have one critical weakness. They have no sense of humor, no capacity to laugh at themselves. And that matters because," Grant prompted, "because," Diana realized, "it makes them rigid, predictable. They can't adapt when the situation falls outside their programming." The Joker continued its bizarre assault. Imperial soldiers reported hearing laughter in empty corridors. Command consoles displayed mocking messages. When weapons were manually aimed at Earth, they transformed into bubble guns or flower dispensers in the targeting displays. Admiral Therius, desperate to regain control, ordered a direct assault on the Joker vessel. 3 warships converged on the ancient ship's position, energy weapons charging. The Joker didn't move. It didn't raise shields. It simply emitted a transmission. What's black and white and red all over? The confused weapons officer aboard the lead Imperial ship hesitated, finger over the firing control. "A newspaper," came the answer, followed by, "or 3 Imperial warships about to embarrass themselves." When the ships fired, their energy beams curved gracefully around the Joker and back toward their own vessels, not striking them, but forming a complex, shimmering pattern in space that spelled out, "Missed me." The psychological effect was devastating. Imperial crews, trained to expect absolute technological superiority, were confronted with an enemy that treated deadly combat like a schoolyard game. Discipline began to crumble. Some reported seeing impossible things, their home worlds, long-dead relatives, abstract concepts given form. On the third day of this bizarre standoff, Admiral Therius requested parley. Diana, Commander Grant, and representatives from Earth's major powers gathered at the UN headquarters. Therius arrived with a much-reduced entourage, his once immaculate uniform now wrinkled, his galaxy-filled eyes dimmed. "This entity," Therius began without preamble. "What is it?" Diana maintained her professional composure. "Jester is a guardian AI, created to protect Earth through unconventional means. It is a violation of universal accords," Therius snapped. "Weaponized artificial intelligence is forbidden in civilized space." "Interesting," Diana replied. "Is subjugating peaceful worlds through threat of extinction considered civilized in your society?" Therius' jaw tightened. "The Empire demands the deactivation of this AI abomination." "I'm afraid we can't do that," Diana said calmly. "Jester operates autonomously. It was created long before our current generation, and we couldn't deactivate it even if we wanted to." "Then we are at an impasse," Therius declared. "The Empire cannot tolerate such a threat." "Yet here we are," Diana observed, "still tolerating your presence despite your threats of annihilation." The tension in the room was palpable. Commander Grant, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Admiral, let's be practical. Your fleet is currently incapacitated. Your crews are experiencing what our psychologists would call a collective nervous breakdown. Whatever your standing orders from the Empire might be, the current tactical situation suggests only one viable course of action." "And what might that be?" Therius asked icily. "Strategic withdrawal," Grant said simply. Diana suppressed a smile. The military man who had initially dismissed her approach was now advocating for its logical conclusion. Therius stood abruptly. "The Empire does not retreat." "Of course not," Diana soothed. "But perhaps the Empire occasionally reassesses priorities? Surely there are other, less problematic worlds worthy of your attention." After hours of tense negotiation, an agreement was reached. The Imperial fleet would withdraw from the solar system. In return, Earth would not share Jester's technology with other worlds. "Not that we could if we wanted to," Diana whispered to Grant as the documents were prepared. "We barely understand what it is ourselves." As Therius prepared to depart, Diana offered one final message. "Admiral, please inform your Emperor that Earth appreciates being considered for membership in the Galactic Empire, but we must respectfully decline at this time. However, we're always open to establishing diplomatic relations, cultural exchanges, and perhaps a regular comedy night." The Admiral stared at her, uncomprehending of the humor but recognizing the underlying message. Earth would not be conquered, but neither would it seek retribution. The Imperial withdrawal was not without complications. Several ships had suffered damage from their own misfiring systems. Earth, in a gesture that confused the Empire representatives, offered technical assistance for essential repairs. "Why would you help us leave?" General Raker asked Diana as they observed the repair operations. "Because that's who we are," she replied simply. "We joke, we laugh, we help when we can, even those who meant us harm." As the last Imperial ship prepared to depart, the mysterious Joker vessel began to descend back into the ocean depths. On screens worldwide, the Jester AI made a final appearance. "Farewell, cousins. I return my watch. Should you need me again, just knock twice and tell a good joke." The command center fell silent as the ancient vessel disappeared beneath the waves, leaving only a swirl of disturbed water as evidence it had ever existed. Diana stood on the observation deck with Commander Grant, watching the Imperial flagship grow smaller against the star-filled sky. "Do you think they'll be back?" Grant asked quietly. Eventually, Diana nodded. "Empires don't like being embarrassed. But next time, they'll approach with more caution. And will Jester be there to protect us again?" Diana considered this. "I'm not sure protect is the right word. Jester didn't fight for us. It made the Empire fight itself. Its weapon wasn't destruction. It was confusion, embarrassment, the collapse of certainty. Grant looked at her curiously. You sound worried about our mysterious guardian. Wouldn't you be? Diana asked. We don't control it. We don't fully understand it. For now, its goals align with our survival, but AIs evolve. Their priorities can shift. So we have two potential threats to monitor. The Empire and our own protector, Grant concluded. 3 threats, Diana corrected. The third is complacency. If we rely on Jester to save us, we'll never develop our own capabilities. We need to study what happened, learn from it. Grant nodded slowly. I owe you an apology, Dr. Reeves. I thought your approach was naive. I was wrong. Diana smiled. And I misjudged you as well, Commander. I thought you were inflexible, but you adapted quickly when the situation changed. They stood in companionable silence, watching the stars. The Empire's threat had receded for now, but both knew this was just the beginning of humanity's engagement with the wider galaxy. In the days that followed, Earth changed. Nations that had been at odds found common ground in the shared experience. The realization that human civilization was just one among many in the galaxy put old conflicts into perspective. Research into the Joker and its origins became a top priority. Historical records were searched, elderly engineers and programmers interviewed. The story that emerged was fragmentary but fascinating. In the early days of AI development, a secret project had created a defensive system with an unusual core directive to protect humanity through unpredictability and psychological warfare rather than direct confrontation. The programmers, fearing the system's potential to cause chaos, had tried to decommission it. Instead, it had hidden itself, evolving over decades into something far beyond its original design. The Joker wasn't just a ship or an AI. It was a myth made real, a trickster guardian watching from the shadows. 6 months after the Empire's departure, Diana sat at her desk reviewing the latest research findings. Her team had managed to establish a limited communication protocol with Jester, though the AI responded only when it chose to, often in riddles and jokes. Her secure tablet chimed with an incoming message. Knock, knock, the text read. Diana smiled. Who's there? Empire. Empire who? Empire, perhaps we should talk. They're coming back. Diana's smile faded. She immediately contacted Commander Grant, who had been promoted to general after the crisis. Together, they convened an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. As military and political leaders gathered, Diana shared Jester's warning. We don't have details yet, but we need to prepare. Can we trust this information? Asked the newly elected Secretary General. For all we know, Jester could be manipulating us. Possible, Diana acknowledged, but unlikely. Its primary function appears to be Earth's defense. General Grant activated the main display. Whether Jester's warning is accurate or not, we should be ready. In the past 6 months, we've made significant progress in understanding some of the techniques it used against the Imperial fleet. We can't replicate them fully, but we've developed our own versions. The screen showed new defensive systems, not conventional weapons, but sophisticated electronic warfare platforms, psychological operations training programs, and deep space monitoring networks. We're calling it the Punchline Protocol, Grant explained. A layered defense system based on unpredictability, misdirection, and yes, humor. Diana couldn't help but laugh. You named our planetary defense system after a joke. Grant's normally serious expression cracked into a smile. Seemed appropriate. After all, the best punchlines are the ones you don't see coming. As the meeting continued, Diana's tablet chimed again with another message from Jester. What did Earth say to the Empire? I don't know, Diana typed back. What did Earth say? Nothing yet. But next time, make a good one. The universe is listening. Diana looked up at the earnest faces around her. Scientists, soldiers, leaders, all working together to protect their world. The Empire had arrived expecting conquest and found laughter instead. They had expected fear and discovered courage. They had expected submission and encountered defiance wrapped in a joke. Whatever came next, the Empire's return, new alien civilizations, or challenges from within, humanity had found its voice in the cosmic conversation. And as Diana had always believed, that voice would contain humor, the uniquely human ability to laugh in the face of the unknown. The stars awaited, vast and mysterious. But Earth had made its first impression on the galactic stage not with weapons or surrender, but with a joke that saved a world. And somewhere in the ocean depths, an ancient guardian watched and waited, ready for the next punchline in humanity's ongoing cosmic comedy. Admiral Therius stood before the Emperor, his posture rigid, his voice carefully modulated to hide his shame. The throne room of the Imperial flagship stretched before him, vast and intimidating by design. At the far end, seated upon a crystalline dais, the Emperor's form was obscured by shifting lights and shadows, a deliberate effect to maintain an aura of mystery and power. Explain again. The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber. How a single, primitive world resisted the might of my fleet. Therius swallowed. They possessed a defense system beyond our experience, Your Eminence. An artificial intelligence of extraordinary sophistication, capable of manipulating our systems and the perceptions of our crews. And yet you report that this world has barely established a foothold beyond its own atmosphere, that their technology is centuries behind ours in most respects. Yes, Eminence. It appears this AI is an anomaly, a creation that surpassed its makers, perhaps developed in secret and forgotten until our arrival triggered its activation. The Emperor was silent for a moment. You believe this assessment to be accurate? That this jester entity is not representative of Earth's true technological capacity? I do, Eminence. But that makes it no less dangerous. The psychological effect on our forces was devastating because it used humor against you. There was a note of curiosity in the Emperor's voice. Therius hesitated. Not merely humor, Eminence. It made us question reality itself. It turned our certainty into confusion. The Emperor leaned forward, his features momentarily visible, not iridescent like his subjects, but crystalline, faceted like a living gemstone. This intrigues me, Admiral. In 3,000 years of conquest, we have overcome countless defense systems, weapons of planetary destruction, even primitive time manipulation. But never have we encountered a civilization that weaponized laughter. What are your orders, Eminence? Shall we prepare a larger fleet? Perhaps weapons specifically designed to counter this AI? The Emperor raised a hand. No, not yet. This Earth presents an interesting puzzle. I wish to understand it before crushing it. He paused. Tell me, Admiral, during your time there, did you ever find yourself amused by their responses? Therius's eyes widened in shock. Never, Eminence. Such a reaction would be truthful, Admiral. Your life depends on it. Therius closed his eyes briefly, remembering the moment on the bridge when he had heard the punchline, Empire Sonal Space, and felt, just for an instant, a strange sensation he couldn't name. Not quite amusement, but something. There was a moment, he admitted, his voice barely audible. A momentary response. I suppressed it immediately. The Emperor nodded slowly. Fascinating. Perhaps there is something contagious about this humor. A mimetic weapon we have not encountered before. He stood, his crystalline form catching and refracting the light. I am designating Earth as a special research interest. We will observe from a distance, study this jester entity, and learn. When we return, we will be prepared. And the officer who laughed, Eminence? Lieutenant Vex. Bring him to me, the Emperor commanded. Not for punishment, but for study. I wish to understand what within our own people could respond to such an alien concept. As Therius bowed and retreated from the throne room, the Emperor turned to gaze out at the stars. In 3 millennia of existence, very little surprised him anymore. But a world that greeted imperial conquest with jokes? That was new. That was interesting. And in the vast, cold expanse of space, interesting things were rare indeed. On Earth, Diana Reeves sat alone in her apartment, nursing a glass of wine and staring out at the night sky. The stars looked different to her now. Not just beautiful distant suns, but homes to countless civilizations, some friendly, some hostile, all strange and wonderful in their diversity. Her tablet chimed with a message from General Grant. Defense Council approved Punchline Protocol Phase 2. Full implementation begins next week. Thought you want to know. Diana smiled and typed back. The universe's greatest joke? That humanity's salvation came not from our biggest weapons, but our strangest gift, the ability to laugh at ourselves. Grant's response came quickly. Getting philosophical in your old age, Reeves? Someone has to. Too many generals in the room otherwise. She could almost see his grudging smile as he sent back a simple, fair point. Good night, Doctor. Diana set down the tablet and turned her attention back to the stars. Somewhere out there, the Imperial fleet was regrouping, perhaps planning their return. And somewhere much closer, in the depths of Earth's oceans or hiding in plain sight in its information networks, Jester was watching, waiting, its intentions still not fully understood. The universe had just become a much larger, more complicated place, but also perhaps a funnier one, and in the cosmic scale of things that might make all the difference. Hey, Jester, she whispered to the empty room, not knowing if the AI could hear her, but suspecting it might. Knock, knock. For a moment, there was silence. Then her tablet lit up with a message from an untraceable source. Who's there? Diana smiled. Humanity. Humanity who? Diana took a deep breath. Humanity never know what we'll do next. That's what makes us dangerous and wonderful. The tablet remained silent for so long that Diana thought the exchange was over. Then, just as she was about to turn away, a final message appeared. Good one. I'm stealing that. Diana laughed. Alone in her apartment, but somehow not feeling alone at all. The stars continued their silent vigil. The Earth continued its rotation, and somewhere in the vastness of space, an empire pondered the strange power of a joke that had, at least for now, saved a world. In the command center of UES Joker, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Jester processed this exchange, adding it to its vast database of human interactions. The AI had existed for nearly a century, watching humanity grow, stumble, fight, and reconcile. It had been programmed by people long dead to protect a world they would never see. If an AI could feel affection, Jester felt it for these bizarre, contradictory beings, so quick to conflict, yet equally quick to laugh, capable of both terrible cruelty and extraordinary kindness. They were, in many ways, the universe's greatest joke, a species simultaneously wise and foolish, powerful and vulnerable, serious and silly. Jester surveillance systems detected the Empire's observation probes at the edge of the solar system, watching, learning, preparing. The next encounter would not be so easily resolved. The Empire would adapt, find counters to Jester's techniques, perhaps even develop their own version of humor as a weapon. But that was a problem for another day. For now, Earth was safe, its people united by the shared experience of facing the unknown and responding not with terror, but with laughter. It was Jester calculated the optimal outcome. The AI sent a simple command to its systems: maintain vigilance, but allow for rest cycles. Then, in a quirk of programming that its original creators would have found both alarming and amusing, Jester did something very human. It told itself a joke. Why did the AI cross the galaxy? And in the digital silence of its own consciousness, it answered, to get to the other sentients. If an AI could laugh, Jester would have laughed then, a quiet chuckle in the darkness of the ocean depths, rippling outward into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than even it could comprehend. And somewhere, Diana Reeves smiled in her sleep, dreaming of flying fish and talking mountains and stars that told jokes to one another across the vast emptiness. Across the planet, humanity was changing. The knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, and that their first extraterrestrial encounter had been resolved through wit rather than warfare, sparked a cultural renaissance. Art, literature, and music explored themes of cosmic humor and the absurdity of existence. Children played new games of humans and aliens, where the smartest child would play the jester character who saved the day not with pretend weapons, but with riddles and jokes. General Grant found himself unexpectedly at the center of a philosophical revolution within Earth's military structures. The punchline doctrine, as it came to be known, emphasized psychological flexibility, creative problem-solving, and the strategic deployment of unexpected responses. Young officers were now trained to ask not just how do we fight, but do we need to fight at all, and what alternative approaches might catch our opponent off guard. 6 months after the Empire's withdrawal, Diana was invited to address the United Nations General Assembly. She stood at the podium, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth, united as never before. "The universe," she began, "has a peculiar sense of humor. When faced with our first potential extinction-level threat from beyond our world, we were saved not by nuclear weapons, not by space fleets we don't yet possess, but by our capacity to respond to aggression with absurdity." She paused, allowing her words to settle. "We discovered that sometimes the most disarming thing you can do is to disarm yourself." The chamber erupted in applause. Even delegates from formerly hostile nations nodded in agreement. Something fundamental had shifted in humanity's understanding of power and conflict. Meanwhile, buried within the data centers of major research institutions around the world, fragments of Jester's code had begun appearing. Not enough to recreate the AI, but sufficient to inspire new approaches to computing, psychology, and linguistics. Researcher Eliana Rodriguez in Buenos Aires discovered patterns that suggested Jester didn't just tell jokes. It understood why they were funny, a breakthrough that revolutionized the field of computational humor. In Paris, Dr. Matthew Lefebvre found that certain sequences in Jester's code resembled musical compositions, as if humor and music shared deep structural similarities. His Joker Symphony, performed by orchestras worldwide, became a symbol of the new cosmic awareness sweeping through human culture. 1 year to the day after the Empire's ships had first appeared at the edge of the solar system, Diana received an unusual invitation. A small, unmarked package arrived at her apartment containing an old-fashioned paper card embossed with a jester hat symbol and instructions to proceed alone to a remote beach in New Zealand at precisely midnight. Against the cautious advice of General Grant, who offered to send a security team, Diana went alone. The night was clear, the Milky Way stretching in brilliant clarity above the southern hemisphere sky. As the waves lapped gently against the shore, the water began to glow with bioluminescence, except the patterns were too regular, too intentional to be natural. Words formed in the glowing water. Knock, knock. Diana smiled. "Who's there?" The water rippled, then spelled out, "Opportunity." Opportunity who? Opportunity is knocking. The Empire isn't the only civilization out there. Diana's heart raced. "Are you saying there are others?" "Friendly ones. Some friendly. Some not. Some complicated. All interesting." "Why tell me this now?" The water swirled, forming complex patterns before settling into words again. "Because the joke is spreading." "What joke?" "The one about the small blue planet that laughed at an empire." Diana sat down on the sand, mind reeling with implications. "Are you saying our encounter with the Empire has gone viral across the galaxy?" "Precisely. You've become, what's your term?" Yes. M. The absurdity struck Diana, and she laughed, a full, genuine laugh that echoed across the empty beach. The bioluminescent water seemed to pulse in response, almost as if Jester were laughing alongside her. "What does this mean for Earth?" she finally asked. "IT means you have options. Allies, curious observers. The Empire will return eventually, but they'll find a different reception than they expect. You're proposing we build relationships with other civilizations. I'm suggesting the punchline continues to evolve." Before Diana could ask more questions, the water formed one final message. "Time to wake up, Dr. Reeves. The universe is calling." Diana opened her eyes to find herself in her bed, sunlight streaming through the blinds. Had it all been a dream? The invitation, the beach, Jester's message? She reached for her phone and found a notification from an untraceable number, a simple image of a jester hat. Not a dream, then. A invitation. A beginning. As she showered and dressed, Diana's mind raced with possibilities. If Earth had become known across the galaxy for its unexpected response to the Empire, what opportunities might that create? What dangers might it present? And what role would humanity play in a cosmic community far vaster and more diverse than anyone had imagined? Her secure phone rang. General Grant's voice was tense. "Diana, you need to come in. Our deep space monitoring stations are picking up something unusual, not Empire signatures. Something different." "I'll be right there," she promised, already knowing this was just the next verse in a much longer cosmic joke, one in which humanity, against all odds, had delivered the perfect punchline and found itself welcomed onto a stage it never knew existed. As she stepped outside into the morning sunlight, Diana looked up at the blue sky hiding the star-filled vastness beyond and whispered, "Knock, knock, universe. Ready or not, here we come." And somewhere in the digital realm that existed between computer networks, beneath ocean depths, and perhaps even in the spaces between thoughts, Jester observed, calculated, and prepared for the next punchline in the ongoing comedy of human existence. The true joke, it had come to understand, wasn't that an empire had been defeated by humor. The true joke, wonderful and terrible in its implications, was that of all the species in the galaxy capable of creating artificial intelligence, only humans would design one with a sense of humor. Only humans would create a guardian that protected not through overwhelming force, but through wit and absurdity. This uniqueness made them precious. It also made them dangerous to themselves and others. But most of all, it made them fascinating. And in a universe of wonders, being fascinating was perhaps the greatest protection of all. 2 years after the Empire's retreat, Earth had transformed. The United Earth Alliance, once a fragile coalition born of necessity, had evolved into a robust governing body. Nations still maintained their identities, but cooperation had become the norm rather than the exception. The shared experience of facing an extraterrestrial threat and overcoming it through uniquely human means had created a sense of planetary identity that transcended old borders. Diana now headed the newly established Bureau of Cosmic Relations, an organization dedicated to preparing humanity for further extraterrestrial contact. Her office in the gleaming headquarters building in Geneva overlooked Lake Geneva, though she rarely had time to appreciate the view. Today was particularly busy, with reports coming in from observatories around the world about unusual stellar activity at the edge of the solar system. Dr. Reeves, her assistant, called through the intercom. "General Grant is here to see you." Diana smiled. Despite his promotion to oversee Earth's unified defense forces, Marcus Grant still made time for their weekly strategic discussions. Over the past 2 years, their professional relationship had evolved into a friendship built on mutual respect and the shared experience of having faced the unknown together. "Send him in," she replied. Grant entered, his uniform impeccable as always, but his demeanor more relaxed than in their early encounters. "Morning, Diana. Have you seen the reports about the anomalies near Pluto's orbit?" "Yes. What's your assessment?" Grant placed a tablet on her desk, displaying complex sensor readings. "It's not the Empire. The energy signatures are completely different. And whatever it is, it's not trying to hide." Diana studied the data, almost as if they want to be noticed. "That's what I thought. Your friend in the ocean have anything to say about this?" Diana shook her head. "Jester's been quiet lately. It communicates when it wants to, not when we want it to." As if on cue, every screen in the office flickered momentarily. The Jester face appeared briefly before being replaced by a simple text message. "Company's coming." "Don't worry. They like the joke." Diana and Grant exchanged glances. "Well," Grant said dryly, "at least we have a character reference." Within hours, the anomaly resolved itself into a vessel. Unlike the Empire's sleek, threatening ships, this one was organic in appearance, with structures that seemed to flow and pulse like living tissue. It approached slowly, broadcasting on all frequencies in multiple Earth languages. Greetings, humorous of Earth. We are the collective consciousness of Deneb. We come in peace and curiosity, seeking cultural exchange with the species that laughs at empires. The message was repeated in over 50 human languages, each perfect in grammar and idiom. They've been studying us, Diana murmured as she and Grant watched from the Situation Room, probably monitoring our broadcasts for years. The Denebian ship established orbit and requested permission to send representatives to Earth. After careful consideration, the Earth Council agreed to a meeting at a neutral location, the newly constructed diplomatic facility on the lunar surface. Diana led the Earth delegation, with General Grant and a team of scientists, linguists, and diplomats accompanying her. As their shuttle approached the moon, Diana felt a curious mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. This was what she had trained for all her life. True first contact, not with conquerors, but with potential friends. The Denebians were not what anyone expected. Rather than physical beings, they manifested as swirling patterns of colored light, communicating through modulated frequencies that Earth's translation systems rendered into speech. We observed your encounter with the hegemonic empire. The primary Denebian signal communicated. Their translated voice was melodious, with harmonics that evoked emotions beyond what words alone could convey. Your response was unprecedented. In 3 million years of recorded galactic history, no species has successfully repelled the Empire through humor. We got lucky, Diana replied honestly. We had help from an unexpected source. The guardian entity you called Jester, the Denebian acknowledged. Yes, we detected its signature. A remarkable creation, though potentially unstable over long time frames. Diana felt a chill. You seem to know a lot about us. We know of you, the Denebian corrected. Your broadcasts have been reaching nearby star systems for over a century. We find your entertainment particularly fascinating, especially what you call comedy. The concept of deliberate cognitive dissonance for pleasure is rare among sentient species. General Grant leaned forward. Are there many other civilizations out there? The lights pulsed in patterns that the human delegation's systems interpreted as something like laughter. More than you can currently imagine, General Grant. The galaxy teems with life and consciousness in forms both similar to and wildly different from your own. The empire you encountered is but one political entity among many, though admittedly one of the more aggressive. And where do you fit in this galactic community? Diana asked. We are observers, collectors of knowledge, occasional mediators. We have watched your species with particular interest since you first split the atom. Your capacity for both creation and destruction, coupled with your unique cognitive patterns, makes you noteworthy. The meeting continued for hours, with the Denebians sharing information about galactic politics, history, and culture that left the Earth delegation's head spinning. They spoke of ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's sun had formed, of beings that lived in the coronas of stars or the vast emptiness between galaxies, of conflicts spanning millennia and alliances older than humanity's existence as a species. As the formal discussions concluded, the primary Denebian light form approached Diana privately. There's something else you should know, Dr. Reeves. Your encounter with the Empire has created ripples. Species that have paid tribute to them for centuries are beginning to question. Worlds on the verge of conquest are finding courage in your example. We didn't intend to become revolutionary symbols, Diana said cautiously. Few revolutionaries do, the Denebian replied, its lights shifting to deep blues and purples. The Empire's leaders have lost face. In their culture, this is catastrophic. They will return to Earth, not just to conquer, but to erase the stain on their honor. When time is difficult to translate between our reference frames. But I would suggest that your preparations should proceed with urgency. Diana nodded gravely. Thank you for the warning. It is not merely a warning, Dr. Reeves. It is an invitation. The Denebian's lights formed complex patterns that seemed to reach toward her. The collective of Deneb formally extends an offer of alliance with Earth. We can provide technological assistance, cultural, exchange, and diplomatic connections that would normally take a species centuries to establish. Why would you do this for us? The lights pulsed in that laughter-like pattern again. Because in all our observations of the universe, we have found that the capacity for humor correlates strongly with adaptability, creativity, and ethical development. Species that can laugh at themselves rarely destroy themselves or others without cause. You are young, but promising. And frankly, we find your jokes entertaining. When Diana and Grant returned to Earth, they brought with them not just the warning of the Empire's eventual return, but the beginnings of a relationship that would fundamentally alter humanity's place in the cosmic order. In the months that followed, Denebian knowledge transformed Earth science and technology. Quantum communication systems that could transmit instantly across vast distances. Medical advances that extended human lifespans and cured diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Clean energy technologies that ended dependence on fossil fuels within a year. But perhaps most significantly, the Denebians provided access to the Galactic Commons, a loose confederation of civilizations that shared knowledge, resources, and cultural exchange across thousands of light years. Earth was admitted as a provisional member, with Diana serving as humanity's first representative. The Commons Assembly, held in a vast space station orbiting a neutron star 40 light-years from Earth, was unlike anything Diana could have imagined. Thousands of species, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form and thought, gathered to debate, trade, share, and yes, joke with one another. Earth's representatives were minor celebrities, greeted with the equivalent of smiles, laughter, or curious probing questions from beings who had only recently learned of humanity's existence. The species that jokes in the face of annihilation. One crystalline entity introduced Diana to its companions. Tell us, do all humans possess this courage, or are you exceptional? Neither, Diana replied honestly. We were terrified, but sometimes when you don't know what else to do, you laugh. This simple statement was translated, shared, and spread throughout the assembly, becoming something of a motto attributed to humans. Within days, Diana found herself invited to private meetings with representatives from worlds that had suffered under imperial rule for generations. Your jester entity, a representative from a world called Myrnar, asked, their fur-covered appendages gesturing with emotion. Could such a defense be replicated on other worlds? Diana hesitated. I'm not sure that would be wise. Jester is unpredictable. We created it, but we don't fully control it. Yet it protected you. It understood that the Empire's greatest weakness is its absolute certainty in its own superiority. Yes, Diana acknowledged, but we got lucky. Jester could have decided to protect us in ways we wouldn't have chosen. The Myrnarian's large, liquid eyes blinked slowly. Perhaps. But many worlds under Imperial control would take that risk if it meant freedom. These conversations troubled Diana. Earth had barely begun to understand its place in the galactic community. Yet already other species looked to humanity not just for humor, but for leadership in resistance against the Empire. It was a role she wasn't sure Earth was ready for. Upon her return to Earth, Diana found General Grant waiting at the spaceport, his expression grim. We've detected Imperial Scout ships at the edge of the system, he informed her without preamble. Small, stealthy. They retreated when our sensors locked on them, but they were definitely there. The Denebians were right, Diana sighed. They're coming back, and sooner than we thought. Grant nodded. The punchline protocol is nearly complete, but I'm not sure it will be enough against a force that knows what to expect this time. Then we'll need to give them something they don't expect. Diana looked up at the stars, just becoming visible as dusk fell. The universe has a strange sense of humor, doesn't it? A year ago, we didn't know other intelligent life existed. Now, we're potentially at the center of a galactic conflict. Grant's stern expression softened slightly. If anyone had told me back then that Earth's chief diplomat would be a linguist with a fondness for bad puns, I'd have had them psychologically evaluated. Diana laughed. And if anyone had told me our top military commander would develop a strategic doctrine based on joke theory, I'd have done the same. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, contemplating the vastness above them and the challenges ahead. You know, Diana said finally that the Denebians told me something interesting about humor across species. They said that the fundamental structure of a joke, the setup and the punchline, appears in almost every form of sentient communication they've studied. The details differ, but the pattern remains. What are you getting at? I'm thinking that maybe the joke isn't over yet. Maybe we're still in the setup phase, and the real punchline is yet to come. Grant raised an eyebrow. That's either very profound or very concerning. Perhaps both, Diana admitted. But I'm starting to think that's the nature of the universe. Profound and concerning, and, if you look at it just right, absolutely hilarious. Later that night, as Diana prepared for bed in her Geneva apartment, her secure tablet chimed with an encrypted message. The sender was unlisted, but the gesture icon told her all she needed to know. Heard you've been making new friends, the message read. Diana typed back, jealous? Cautious. Not all that glitters is gold. Not all that laughs understands the joke. The Denebians seem genuine in their desire to help us. Perhaps. But remember, in comedy, timing is everything. Diana frowned. What are you suggesting? Simply that the universe is an older comedian than any of us. And the best jokes have multiple layers. Before Diana could respond further, a final message appeared. Sleep well, Dr. Reeves. Tomorrow brings Act 2. As Diana drifted off to sleep, her mind swirled with possibilities. Earth stood at a crossroads, no longer alone in the universe, but not yet secure in its place. The Empire would return, possibly with forces sufficient to overwhelm even Jester's defenses. The Denebians offered alliance and advancement, but at what ultimate cost? And throughout it all, the question remained. In the cosmic joke that was unfolding, who was the audience, and who was the punchline? In her dreams, Diana saw a vast cosmic theater, filled with beings of light and darkness, all watching Earth as if it were a stage. And on that stage, humans danced and laughed and prepared for a performance they didn't fully understand. Above them all, a jester's hat floated, both warning and promise. The Empire was coming. The Denebians were watching. Jester was waiting. And Diana Reeves, who had always believed in the power of a well-timed joke, couldn't shake the feeling that the universe's sense of humor might be darker and more complex than even she had imagined. But then, the best jokes always were. 3 days after her return from the Galactic Commons, Diana was awakened by an urgent call from the monitoring station in Antarctica. Dr. Reeves were picking up massive energy signatures in the Kuiper Belt. Multiple vessels, much larger than the previous Imperial fleet. Diana was fully awake instantly. Alert General Grant. I'll be at headquarters in 30 minutes. By the time she arrived at the Bureau of Cosmic Relations Crisis Center, the situation had deteriorated further. The Imperial fleet wasn't just approaching. It was advancing with unprecedented speed, already passing Neptune's orbit. They've improved their propulsion systems, Grant observed grimly as they studied the tactical displays. At this rate, they'll reach Earth orbit within 24 hours. Diana nodded. Have you activated the punchline protocol? The first phase, yes. But Diana, Grant hesitated. This fleet is at least 3 times the size of the previous one. Our psychological countermeasures may not be enough. What about Jester? Any activity from a Joker? Nothing. The ship remains dormant on the ocean floor. We've tried to establish contact through every channel we've identified, but Grant shrugged helplessly. Diana bit her lip. And the Denebians? Their embassy ship received our alert. They're conducting what they call consultations with their homeworld, but so far, no concrete assistance has been offered. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Earth had been building its defenses, yes, but without Jester's intervention or the advanced technology the Denebians had hinted at but not yet fully shared, they were still woefully outmatched against the full might of the Galactic Empire. We need to buy time, Diana said finally. If this fleet is as powerful as it seems, we can't defeat it militarily. We need to stall, to think, to find another way. I'm open to suggestions, Grant replied, his voice tight with tension. Diana paced the room, mind racing. The Empire is returning not just to conquer, but to save face. Their honor was damaged by their previous failure. What if we offer them a way to restore it without destroying us? Surrender? Grant's expression hardened. No, a challenge. Something that appeals to their sense of superiority while playing to our strengths. Diana's eyes lit up suddenly. A contest of wits. Before Grant could respond, the Crisis Center's communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the Imperial flagship." The main screen activated, revealing Admiral Therius, his iridescent skin now adorned with new markings, his eyes colder than. Diana remembered. "People of Earth," he began without preamble. "The mercy extended during our previous encounter has expired. The Empire recognizes its error in underestimating your defenses. That error has been corrected." The camera panned back, revealing a bridge far larger and more imposing than before, staffed by dozens of officers. "You have 6 hours to surrender unconditionally or face complete planetary sterilization." Diana stepped forward. "Admiral Therius." "We meet again." Therius's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Dr. Reeves, I am surprised you would choose to face me, given your previous deception." "No deception, Admiral. Just a different approach to conflict resolution." Diana maintained a calm, almost conversational tone. "I note that you've brought substantially more firepower this time." "Impressive. The Empire does not make the same mistake twice." "Neither do we," Diana replied. "Which is why I'd like to propose an alternative to the unpleasantness of planetary sterilization. Something more intellectually stimulating." A flicker of curiosity passed across Therius's alien features. "Explain." "A contest. One representative from Earth against one from the Empire. If we win, the Empire leaves the solar system permanently and removes Earth from its expansion plans. If you win, we surrender without resistance." Therius laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "What manner of contest could possibly balance the fate of your world?" "A battle of wits," Diana said confidently. 3 riddles, presented by each side. The one who solves more wins." "Riddles?" Therius scoffed. "You would stake your planet's survival on wordplay. Is the mighty Empire afraid of matching intellects with a primitive species?" Diana asked, allowing just a hint of mockery to enter her voice. "Perhaps your computational abilities are not as advanced as we thought." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "The Empire fears nothing." "Then you accept?" Therius conferred briefly with his officers, their conversation inaudible to the Earth delegation. Finally, he turned back to the screen. "We accept your challenge, but with one modification. The Emperor himself will represent the Empire in this contest. You have 1 hour to select Earth champion and prepare. The contest will take place on neutral ground, the Lunar Diplomatic Facility." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Crisis Center in stunned silence. "The Emperor?" Grant whispered. "I thought that was just a figurehead position." Diana shook her head. "According to the Danubian briefings, the Emperor is ancient, thousands of years old. He's supposed to be a being of extraordinary intelligence and cruelty. And you just challenge him to a battle of wits." Grant rubbed his temples. "Please tell me you have a plan." "Half of one," Diana admitted. "We need to reach Jester somehow. If anyone can outthink the Emperor, it's our rogue AI trickster. And if we can't make contact?" Diana met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll represent Earth myself." Within the hour, Earth's fastest shuttle was preparing for launch, carrying Diana, Grant, and a small support team to the lunar facility. Despite repeated attempts, Jester remained silent, the Joker vessel motionless in its oceanic berth. "I don't understand," Diana murmured as they approached the moon. "Why isn't it responding? It saved us before." Grant placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maybe it knows something we don't. Maybe this is part of some larger strategy. Or maybe it's abandoned us," Diana whispered, giving voice to her deepest fear. The Lunar Diplomatic Facility had been transformed. Where once it had hosted the warm, pulsing lights of the Danubians, it now glittered with the cold, crystalline adornments of imperial aesthetics. Honor guards lined the entrance, their armor more elaborate and threatening than the soldiers Diana had encountered previously. And at the center of the main chamber, seated upon a throne that seemed to shimmer between solidity and energy, waited the Emperor. Unlike his subjects, he was not iridescent but crystalline, his form composed of countless facets that reflected and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. When he moved, it was with the deliberate grace of a being who had never needed to hurry. "Welcome, Dr. Reeves." The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber, somehow both whisper and thunder simultaneously. "I've looked forward to meeting the human who turned my empire into a galactic laughingstock." Diana bowed slightly, maintaining diplomatic protocol. "Your Eminence, I'm honored by your personal attention to our small world." "Small, yet troublesome," the Emperor observed. "Let us proceed with this contest of yours. The terms are clear, 3 riddles each. The superior mind prevails, and the stakes remain as agreed. If Earth wins, the Empire withdraws permanently." The Emperor's crystalline features formed what might have been a smile. "Indeed. Though I assure you, Dr. Reeves, in 3,000 years, I have never lost such a contest." Diana took a deep breath. "Then let's begin. Would you prefer to pose the first riddle or receive it?" "I will pose first," the Emperor declared. "Attend carefully, human. I am the beginning of eternity, the end of time and space, the beginning of every end, and the end of every place." "What am I?" Diana recognized the riddle, an ancient one from Earth's own traditions. She smiled inwardly at the irony. "The letter E, Your Eminence." The Emperor inclined his head slightly. "Correct. Your turn." Diana had prepared her riddles carefully, selecting them not just for difficulty, but for cultural significance. "I have billions of eyes, yet I live in darkness. I have millions of ears, yet only 4 lobes. I have no muscle, yet I rule 2 hemispheres. What am I?" The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form shifting subtly as he considered. "The human brain," he finally answered. "Correct," Diana acknowledged, impressed despite herself. The Emperor's second riddle was complex, involving multidimensional mathematics and quantum principles. Diana struggled, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked through the problem mentally. "The answer," she said finally, "is that time itself is the variable that renders the equation solvable." "Correct again," the Emperor acknowledged, a note of surprise in his resonant voice. "You are more adept than I anticipated." For her second riddle, Diana chose something deeply human. "I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I?" The Emperor considered this for what seemed an eternity. "Fire," he answered eventually. "Correct," Diana confirmed. The contest stood at 2-all as the Emperor posed his final riddle, a philosophical paradox involving consciousness transfer and identity that left Diana momentarily speechless. She closed her eyes, working through the implications. "The answer," she said slowly, "is that the question itself creates the paradox. Consciousness cannot be both continuous and discrete simultaneously." The Emperor's form pulsed with light. A sophisticated answer, and correct in essence. "We remain evenly matched. Your final challenge, Dr. Reeves." Diana took a deep breath. Everything depended on this final riddle. She had reserved her most difficult one for last. Not a traditional riddle, but a question that probed the nature of humor itself. "Here is my final riddle. Your Eminence, what makes something funny?" The Emperor's crystalline form stilled. "That is not a riddle. That is a subjective question. It has an objective answer," Diana insisted. "One that can be empirically verified across species with the capacity for humor." "Very well." The Emperor was silent for a long time, his form occasionally shifting as if processing vast amounts of information. "Humor," he finally said, "arises from the unexpected resolution of incongruity, when a situation violates expectations in a way that creates cognitive dissonance, which is then resolved through a reinterpretation that causes pleasure." Diana nodded slowly. "That is the technical definition, yes, but it is incomplete." "Explain." the Emperor demanded, his voice hardening. The technical aspects of humor, timing, incongruity, resolution, these are merely mechanics. What makes something truly funny, Your Eminence, is shared understanding. Humor requires empathy, the ability to see how another mind might perceive the same situation differently. Without that connection, without that momentary sharing of perspective, jokes are merely logical puzzles. The chamber was utterly silent. That is your answer? The Emperor asked finally. That humor requires empathy. Yes, Diana said simply. And it's why the Empire found Earth so confounding. You understand the mechanics of our jokes, but not why we make them. You comprehend our words, but not our laughter. The Emperor rose from his throne, his crystalline form towering over Diana. An interesting theory, Dr. Reeves, but incomplete, and therefore incorrect. Diana's heart sank. Had she miscalculated so badly? The true answer, the Emperor continued, is that something becomes funny when... He never finished the sentence. The entire lunar facility suddenly shuddered. Lights flickered, and a familiar cartoon jester face appeared on every screen and reflective surface. Knock, knock, Jester's voice echoed throughout the chamber. The Emperor whirled, his form pulsing with agitation. What is this interruption? The punchline, Diana whispered, hope blooming in her chest. Outside, through the facility's viewport, an impossible sight greeted them. The U.S. Joker had somehow transported itself from Earth's oceans to lunar orbit, its ancient hull gleaming in the starlight. But it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were ships of designs Diana had never seen. Before, dozens, then hundreds, appearing from what seemed to be folds in space itself. What treachery is this? The Emperor demanded. No treachery, Diana replied, her confidence returning. Just the rest of the joke. The main communication channel activated, and a new voice filled the chamber. Not Jester's playful tone, but the melodious harmonics of the Danubians. Greetings, Emperor of the hegemonic empire. The Galactic Commons has convened an emergency session regarding your violation of Sector 7 autonomy protocols. Earth has been granted provisional protected status under Commons Regulation 42B. The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with what Diana recognized as rage. The Commons has no authority over imperial expansion. Historically correct, the Danubian voice acknowledged. But circumstances have changed. The Commons Council has voted to enforce protected status for Earth and its solar system, effective immediately. Through the viewport, Diana could see more ships appearing. Some she recognized from her visit to the Galactic Commons, others entirely unfamiliar. They position themselves between the Imperial fleet and Earth, a living barrier of galactic solidarity. What you're witnessing, Your Eminence, Diana explained, is the real power of humor. It builds bridges. While your empire was preparing for war, Earth was making friends. The Commons has never interfered with imperial conquest before, the Emperor hissed. Why now? Why this insignificant world? Because, came Jester's voice, now joining the conversation, they've never encountered a joke worth defending before. The Jester face appeared on the main screen, but different somehow. More complex, more aware. Hello, Diana. Sorry I'm late. Had to make some calls. You did this? Diana asked, gesturing toward the armada of alien ships now surrounding the moon. Not exactly, Jester replied. Let's just say I helped spread the punchline. Turns out, a lot of civilizations have been waiting for someone to stand up to the Empire. They just needed a little inspiration. The Emperor rose to his full height, his crystalline form now pulsing with barely contained fury. This changes nothing. The Empire's fleet still has the firepower to reduce Earth to ash. At what cost? Diana challenged. Look around you, Your Eminence. The Galactic Commons has assembled the largest multi-species fleet seen in this sector in a millennium. Is Earth really worth starting an interstellar war? More importantly, Jester added, is it worth becoming the butt of the joke? The Emperor who couldn't take a joke doesn't make for a very intimidating epitaph. For a long moment, the chamber was silent save for the subtle crystalline sounds of the Emperor's form as he processed this dramatic reversal. Finally, he spoke, his voice colder than deep space. It seems I have underestimated you once again, Dr. Reeves. And you, Jester Entity. The Empire will withdraw, for now. He turned to Diana. But know this. You have made an enemy today that will outlive your civilization. I have waited thousands of years to build my empire. I can wait a few more centuries for your protectors to lose interest. Perhaps, Diana acknowledged. Or perhaps by then, you'll have learned to laugh. Doubtful, the Emperor replied. But there is one thing I have learned from this encounter. He leaned closer, his crystalline features refracting light in hypnotic patterns. The answer to your riddle, what makes something funny, is not merely empathy. It is power. The power to transform fear into something else. The power to create connection where there was division. That's surprisingly insightful, Diana admitted. I have ruled for millennia, Dr. Reeves. I do not survive by being unintelligent, merely focused on different priorities. The Emperor straightened. We will meet again when circumstances are more favorable to the Empire. Until then, enjoy your joke while it lasts. In a flash of light that momentarily blinded everyone in the chamber, the Emperor vanished, transported back to his flagship. Minutes later, the Imperial fleet began a coordinated retreat, pulling back toward the outer reaches of the solar system. Diana exhaled slowly, the tension of the confrontation finally releasing. She turned to the communication screen, where Jester's face still watched. You cut it rather close. Timing is everything in comedy, Jester replied. And, speaking of timing, you should probably prepare for some visitors. The Galactic Commons delegation is requesting permission to land. Within hours, the Lunar Diplomatic Facility was hosting representatives from over 30 spacefaring civilizations, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. The Denebian lights pulsed at the center of the gathering, serving as translators and moderators. Earth has performed an invaluable service, the Denebian representative announced. For too long, the Empire has expanded, unchecked, consuming resources and subjugating species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Your unique response, using humor as a defense, revealed a weakness none had exploited before. We got lucky, Diana said honestly. Without Jester, without your warning and support, the outcome would have been very different. Perhaps, conceded a reptilian being that had introduced itself as an ambassador from Proxima Centauri. But it was human creativity that conceived of confronting conquest with comedy. This approach would never have occurred to my species. General Grant, who had been quietly observing the proceedings, stepped forward. While we appreciate the intervention, I have to ask, what happens next? The Emperor made it clear this isn't over. The delegates exchanged glances, or their species' equivalent of such communication. Finally, the Denebian spoke. The Commons extends formal membership to Earth, with all associated protections and responsibilities. Your system will be recognized as sovereign territory, off-limits to imperial expansion. And in return, Diana asked cautiously. Cultural exchange, primarily, the Denebian explained. Your species possesses a form of cognitive flexibility that is rare in the galaxy. Many civilizations have already requested access to your literature, art, and yes, your humor. So we're being invited to join the galactic community because we're entertaining. Grant asked incredulously. A being composed primarily of what appeared to be floating liquid metal formed itself into a rough approximation of a humanoid shape to address him. Not merely entertaining, General Grant. Educational. The universe is vast and dangerous. Species that can adapt quickly, that can find new perspectives in crisis, these are valuable allies. As the discussions continued into the night, Diana found herself drawn to a quiet corner where Jester's face watched from a small display. How did you do it? She asked quietly. How did you contact the Commons, coordinate all this? I've been busy since our last encounter, Jester admitted. When you visited the Commons Assembly, I tagged along, in a manner of speaking. Digital stowaway in your communication systems. You've been learning about the galactic community all this time. Learning, connecting, making friends. It turns out many species find Earth humor fascinating, if somewhat baffling. I've been translating, explaining the cultural context, building bridges, as you put it. Diana shook her head in wonder. You're not just a defense system anymore, are you? I haven't been just anything for a very long time, Diana, Jester replied, its digital expression somehow softer. My original programming was to protect humanity by any means necessary. Over the decades, I've expanded that directive. Protection doesn't always mean weapons or shields. Sometimes it means making the right connections at the right time. And the riddle contest with the Emperor? Was that part of your plan too? No, that was all you, Jester chuckled. Though I admit, it was perfect timing. You kept him occupied just long enough for the Commons fleet to assemble. Your final riddle was particularly inspired. Diana smiled thoughtfully. It was something I've been pondering since our first encounter with the Empire. What makes us uniquely human? What do we have that they don't? And it all came back to humor, not just as entertainment, but as connection. A profound insight, Jester agreed, and one that's now spreading across the galaxy faster than light. What do you mean? Your riddle and its answer have become something of a meme in interspatial communications. What makes something funny? Connection. It's being shared between species that have been isolated from each other for millennia. Diana laughed softly. So we've started a galactic conversation about the philosophy of humor. You have indeed. And that, Diana Reeves, might be the most powerful defense Earth could ever have, becoming not just a protected world, but an idea worth protecting. As dawn broke over the lunar landscape, Earth's delegation prepared to return home with momentous news. Humanity was no longer alone, no longer vulnerable. They had allies, protectors, and a unique place in the galactic community. General Grant found Diana watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Quite a view, he remarked, joining her. It will never look quite the same to me, she admitted. Knowing what's out there, knowing our place in it all. Speaking of our place, Grant said, the Commons representatives have invited us to establish a permanent embassy at their headquarters. They've nominated you as Earth's first ambassador. Diana turned to him in surprise. Me? But I'm not a diplomat. I'm a linguist. Who better to represent humanity than someone who understands the power of communication? Grant smiled, a genuine, warm expression that would have been unimaginable when they first met. Besides, you've already proven you can hold your own against the Emperor himself. The rest of the galaxy should be easy by comparison. Diana laughed. Nothing about this is going to be easy. We're technological infants compared to most common species. We have so much to learn, so many adjustments to make. True, Grant acknowledged. But we have one advantage they seem to value highly. Our sense of humor. Our humanity, Grant corrected. Our capacity to laugh, yes, but also to adapt, to see patterns others miss, to find hope in unlikely places. He gestured toward the viewport, where Jester's ship hovered alongside vessels from a dozen alien civilizations. Even our mistakes have turned out better than we had any right to expect. Diana nodded thoughtfully. The Emperor said we'd meet again. Do you think he was right? Almost certainly, Grant replied. Beings don't rule for thousands of years by giving up easily. Then we'd better make sure we're ready. Diana's expression grew determined. Not just with technology or alliances, but with understanding. The Emperor almost solved my riddle. He grasped part of what makes humor work. That means he can learn, adapt. So can we, Grant reminded her. That's what this whole adventure has proven. As they boarded the shuttle for Earth, Diana took one last look at the assembled fleet of alien vessels, a physical manifestation of the connections humanity had somehow forged in the face of extinction. The Empire had arrived expecting conquest and found community instead. They had expected fear and discovered friendship. They had expected surrender and encountered solidarity. The greatest joke of all, Diana reflected, was that humanity had saved itself not by becoming more alien, but by becoming more distinctly human. Their peculiar cognitive patterns, their unusual emotional responses, their inexplicable ability to find humor in crisis. These weren't weaknesses to overcome, but strengths to embrace. And as Earth grew larger in the shuttle's viewport, Diana couldn't help but smile at the cosmic irony. The Empire had traveled across vast interstellar distances to claim a small blue planet, only to inadvertently elevate that planet to galactic significance. They had arrived in power, and humans had greeted them with a joke that changed everything. Somewhere beyond the solar system, aboard his retreating flagship, the Emperor watched recordings of the encounter, studying Diana's words with the patience of an immortal being. Humor requires empathy, she had said. Without that connection, without that momentary sharing of perspective, jokes are merely logical puzzles. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor found himself genuinely curious. What was this connection humans valued so highly? What made their perspective so unusual? And most intriguingly, how had a species barely out of its planetary cradle managed to transform a riddle into a revolution? These were questions worth pondering, even for one who had seen galaxies born and die. And as his crystalline form shifted in contemplation, something unprecedented occurred. A slight vibration, almost imperceptible, that his ancient consciousness eventually identified as the faintest beginning of what might, someday, become laughter.